All right, tonight's sermon is titled Avoiding Relationship Pitfalls and a Biblical Guide to Love and Marriage. 今天晚上的主题是避免恋爱与婚姻的圣经的指南。And so what I want us to look at, if you follow the PPT, we're going to look at 5 biblical principles for healthy Christian relationships. And this is going to be for those that are looking to start dating and then also in marriage. 所以我们你看 PPT 时候就可以让 PPT 带领你有健康基督徒的关系有5个上进的原则。然后呢，就是为了谁还没结婚，还有刚才结婚的弟兄姊妹们。And so the whole idea was that I know that our church has a lot of single people. And recently, in the past year, we've had 5 couples got married. So I thought this is a good time to preach this sermon. 因为我知道我们的教会的单身的弟兄姊妹们超级多，还有过去的这1年里，我们也有很多人刚才结婚了，所以我觉得就是现在真的适合我们的教会这個主題。So let's look at 5 principles. These are from the Bible to have a healthy Christian relationship. So this is like if you want to find a boyfriend, girlfriend to get married down the road, or if you have just gotten married, these are things from the Bible that will teach you how to have a healthy relationship. 所以就是为了有5个从圣经来的经文还有主题，为了帮助我们有健康的关系就比如如果你想找到男女朋友，为了以后结婚，或者你刚才结婚了，就是从圣经带领我们的，告诉我们怎么有健康的关系。And this is very important because right now there is, in our culture, when I say culture, I mean the world, because this problem isn't just found in America or Europe or Russia or China. It's all over the world. 然后呢，就是为了我们的关系，因为我们现在的时代，而且这不是一个国家的社会的问题，就比如这不是只有美国的、欧洲的、非洲的、俄罗斯的、中国的等等，就是全部的我们的世界的社会的问题。And you'll notice that what is this problem? 这是什么问题 is that right now our culture is all about having these relationships that anytime anything goes wrong, we break it off. 然后呢，你发现了我们现在的时代。如果你的关系现在有问题的话，那我们就是现在分开。And by the time people get married, and this is even for Christians, they've already gone through 10, 12 or more relationships. 然后呢，还有我们基督徒也有这个问题，就比如有人刚才结婚了，但是他们到结婚的时候，他们已经有10个、12个、15个等等的关系，然后呢，他们开始结婚。And so, think about this. If you are going to get married and you've already been through a dozen relationships, what kind of a bad habit right away do you have? 那就比如你开始想一想，如果你现在结婚了，但是你已经有12个多的之前的男女朋友，你现在想一想，你现在的不好的习惯是什么？ you're already accustomed to breaking up, to stopping the relationship. And then you stop and then maybe you pause for a while and then you find someone else. 就是你现在的不好的习惯是什么？就是你停止你现在的关系，可能短时间没有男女朋友，以后就找新的。And this kind of mindset, this kind of habit is it permeates into our marriage relationships. 然后这个不好的习惯，你可以找到在很多人现在的婚礼的生活，他们结婚的生活。What is that? 就是什么？ That is that when something starts to go wrong or something doesn't come out the way that you want, it's time to stop. It's time to change. 就比如我现在的结婚的生活，不是我自己做梦的， 或者我现在的结婚的生活不是那么好，或者我觉得我可以找到更好的，那我可以跟他离婚。就是很多我们现在的社会有这个问题。And so this is like, and the idea is that, well, it's not going well, I'm just going to get a divorce. This isn't just a, this country's problem or that country's problem. This is found all over the world. 然后这不是一个国家、两个国家的问题，就是全部的国家，我们现在的世代的社会的问题。And so this is something that we need to, as Christians, we need to kind of go back and let the Bible change the way that we think and to expose those bad habits within us. 然后我们基督徒都有这个问题，所以我们现在需要圣经在改变我们自己的想法，我们的做法。还有把我们不好的习惯带走。And so let's look at this. So 5 biblical principles for a healthy Christian relationship. 所以健康的基督徒的关系的5项圣经的原则。Number 1, 第一个 avoid dwelling on the past or overthinking. So this one here is geared more towards those that have not yet been married. 然后第一个主题是避免沉湎于过去或过分的思虑。然后这个比较对还没结婚的弟兄姊妹们。Philippians 3:13 and 14. 腓立比书第3章13到14节。Brothers, I do not consider myself as having taken hold of it, but one thing I do.Forgetting what lies behind and reaching forward for what lies ahead. I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Jesus Christ. 弟兄们，我不是以为自己已经得着了，我只有一件事，就是忘记背后努力面前的，向着标杆直跑。要的神在基督耶稣里从上头活照我们的奖赏。So what is Paul talking about here? 所以保罗现在的他的问题是什么？ He's talking about he already knows all the garbage that he has in his past. He already knows how he stood by and he promoted the death of Christians. He knew that he played a huge hand in directly attacking churches. 所以就是现在保罗他知道他的背后，就他之前还没成为基督徒的时候，他有这么多的垃圾。他那时候愿意杀死很多基督徒，他也是很多人带领很多人来攻击教会，他都知道他之前是有这样的问题。But he doesn't allow that to control his tomorrow or what he is to do right now. 但是他不让他的之前的垃圾，他之前的事情打扰他现在要做的，或者他知道耶稣生他明天做的。And as Christians, we can never use as an excuse our past or things that we did in the past that were wrong to dictate what we should be doing now or in the future, nor can we make those as an excuse saying, well, I've already done that, I might as well keep doing it. Because that's not what the Bible teaches, that's not what Paul did. 然后我们基督徒也不能用这个借口说了，哦，我之前也有这个问题，那我现在还有啊，没关系，就是我的不好的习惯，我们不能做这样子，或者是对我们自己说这样子。因为保罗他知道他之前有这么多的问题，但是他知道耶稣说了什么，圣经说了什么，而且他知道他应该做什么，他就开始改变。然后我们基督徒也应该这样子。And so, for instance, if you've already had many, many broken relationships, then don't tell yourself, well, I've already had X number of broken relationships. I guess I might as well just keep going, go with the flow. 然后你也不能说，哦，我之前有这么多的真不好的关系，那我还可以找到一样的差的。或者我没办法真的改变。Because that wasn't Paul's thinking. 因为这不是保罗的想法。And also, going forward, like when you go into, so let's say you just get married or you've been married recently and you know that you've had all these issues in your past. Those issues in your past are no reason that you cannot change. You never let those control or dictate or to give you an excuse on why you should not or why you should or should not change. 然后如果你刚才结婚了，或者你只有结婚比较短的时间，但是你知道你之前的缺点是什么，你也不能对你自己还是你的爱人说，哦，这是我不好的习惯，或者这是我的缺点，我没办法改变。Because the Bible teaches us that we are new creatures in Christ, and that every single day that God's grace is new towards us. And so we should never approach a relationship as thinking, well, I have all these issues in the past. I guess that's who I am. I need to, and then, this person needs to accept me for who I am. Because we're new creatures in Christ. 然后呢，我们也不能说，哦，因为我之前有这么多的问题啊，就是我没办法改变啊，那我的爱人他也需要接受我是这样子人，因为在耶稣里面我们都是新的，圣经说了。And also, if you are going into, you want to get, let's say you want to get married, so you're starting to search for a potential boyfriend girlfriend. 就比如如果你想结婚，然后你开始想找到一个男女朋友 ，and you know what the things that you're looking for, and you start to look for them, but you also know that you have your own issues in the past. 然后你知道你想找到怎么样的男女朋友，但是你也知道你之前也有很多缺点或者很多问题。When you go into find as a Christian and you're looking for another Christian, remember that when you go into a relationship that there is no perfect guy or girl, or you're married, there is no perfect husband or wife. All of us have issues from our past. All of us have sins from our past. 然后你想找到男女朋友，或者你刚才结婚了，没有完美的老公，没有完美的姊妹，没有完美的男女朋友，没有完美的媳妇儿。我们都有自己之前的罪，我们都有自己的缺点的问题。And so 1 Peter 4:8 says, 所以彼得前书第4章8节说 Above all, keep fervent in your love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. 只要切切彼此的胜过爱，因为爱能遮掩等一下我的电脑 OK 遮掩许多的罪。And so knowing that there is no perfect boyfriend or girlfriend, knowing that there is no perfect husband or wife, this should be our mindset every single day as Christians. 所以我们知道没有完美的男女朋友，没有完美的老公老婆，那我们应该让这个经文再每天重新我们自己的想法。And what is that? That love is greater than our past sins, and that Christ has forgiven us of all of our past sins, and that we should do and treat people the same way, especially those who we want to either pursue in marriage, or have already married. 而且我们应该知道，耶稣已经赦免我们所有的罪，而且他用自己的爱做了，成为我们的代替，对不对？那如果你想找一个配偶，想找男女朋友，你也应该有这个问题，因为你开始在一起的时候，肯定你觉得这个人真的很完美，他真的什么都没有问题。但是1、2、3个月、4、5、6个月后，你就开始发现，这个人的缺点这么多。但是我们要用爱帮助他们，爱原谅他们，爱赦免他们。And the longer you're together, the more you're going to start finding out, hey, this guy isn't the perfect guy that I thought he was, or this woman isn't the perfect woman who I thought she is. And so we need to have love to control our thinkings and our actions and to treat them that way. And remember, the way that you treat the person that you either are pursuing or that you've already married, you will play a hand in how they are, the man or the woman that they are 10 years from now. 还有我们都要 真的很记住这一个点，就是你这一个点，就是你现在在追求谁，或者现在爱谁，或者已经结婚了谁，你对他的性格，而且他的态度10年后会有很大的影响。That means right now, now that is not to say that if 10 years from now your husband is a demon, like he treats you like a demon, treats his family like a demon, that's not to say that is because of you. But there will be, to some extent, you will have played a role in that. 就比如，如果你10年后的老公他真是一个魔鬼，对你对家庭是这么大的魔鬼，你也不能对你自己说no，就是全部是我的问题。但是一部分是的，一部分是的。Why? Because you two people, you live together. You eat together, you sleep together, you work together, you do life together. And so part of you and the way that you treat him or the way that he treats you is going to, over time, slowly change, whether good or bad. 所以，因为你们，如果你已经结婚的话，那你们每天一起吃饭，一起睡觉，一起住在一起，对吧？然后你会，如果你真的对他没有那么好，那每天会越来越改变他。And this goes for the husband and the wife. 就是对老公还有老婆。And this is also true in our relationships. In all types of relationships. 而且就是对我们的关系就是全部有影响。And so what we don't want to do as Christians, we don't want to overthink about our past and allow that to say, well, I really can't change. And so this is why I'm this way. This is why I treat him or her that way. 然后我们也不能想那么多，然后说，我已经是就是我知道就是非常大的缺点，但是我没办法改变，所以就是为什么我每天对他这样子。We're not supposed to be that way because in Christ we are new creatures. And even if you've been a Christian for a long time and you have all these different issues, tomorrow is a new day. God's grace is new every single day. 然后如果你是已经很长的时间就是信耶稣是基督徒，但是你知道你还有这么多的问题，明天是新一天，明天上帝的恩典是重新来的，所以我们也不能用昨天的问题成为我们的借口。So avoid dwelling on the past and overthinking, and especially avoid using that, your wrongs, to control what you would do next, especially when you're looking for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or if you've already been married for a long time, don't use what's happened in the past to dictate what you will do tomorrow. 所以如果你还没交女朋友，但是你知道你已经跟很多人分手的话，那不能用这个习惯的不好的习惯控制你未来的机会。如果你已经结婚的话，然后你知道我常常骂我的爱人，那你不能用这个借口为了改变你明天的机会。And this goes both ways. This goes towards those that are pursuing a relationship and those that are not. 然后就是为了互相的帮助。还没结婚，等待结婚，或者已经结婚了很长的时间。And if you look on the PPT slide, I put up last night's, which would actually been this morning, our the devotion. I put that on there, so you guys can look through that more. That's from yesterday. 所以你看到那个现在的 PPT 就是昨天的，今天早上的我们的分享。你可以我不要花很多时间，因为我们今天晚上的主题的内容超级多，但是你可以再看一遍。And so I don't want to spend a lot of time on. I don't want to spend any more time on that because that was sent out this morning. We have a lot to cover tonight. So, number 2, maintain a balanced approach to giving. 第二个，在给予方面保持平衡。All right, so as Christians, we have to often reinforce this into our minds and to other Christians, especially those that have not not yet married. 我们基督徒，特别是如果还没结婚的话，我们要互相帮助彼此，就是再重新告诉他们，告诉我们是什么 ？Is that a Christian is not to marry an unbeliever， 就是基督徒不可以跟非基督徒结婚。And I don't know why, and it might just be because, and I know this plays a part in it, that in China, I have found that there are so many, especially sisters, that are married to unbelievers. And I know in part this has to do with because the population is so high, so obviously you're going to find more, but I'm just talking about percentage-wise. It seems to be really high in China. 然后我发现了，就是在中国，我知道中国的人口是非常多，所以肯定找到更多这样的人。但是我发现了，在教会里面，很多姊妹选择跟非基督徒结婚。然后我发现了，在中国这个%多少比较高，比别的国家高。And so why is this? 那是为什么？ Well, there's a lot of actually there's a few major issues with that. There's a few answers to that issue. 然后就是有几个比较重要的答案，就是告诉我们这个答案，这个问题的答案。And I don't want to look at that specifically tonight because that's for another sermon. But what I want to look at tonight is when we are going into a relationship, how do I maintain a balance in what I'm to give and receive? And this is very important. I'll explain what I mean. 所以就是我现在我们不要学习或者讨论这个在中国姊妹跟非基督徒的问题，因为就是另外一个争到的主题。这就是我现在你看第二点，就是在基于方面保持平衡，那就是什么意思？就是我给他，他给我。And this specifically, let's focus first on we're gonna look at those that are not yet married. 就是我们现在要学习还没结婚。And then we're gonna look at the marriage. 然后是结婚的。So first off, those that have not married, we have to. When I say we, because this is also applied to me, we have to set rules for ourselves. That means you yourself, me, myself, anyone that is a single guy or girl, we have to put barriers. We have to say, okay, I'm not going to cross this line. 然后我们就是我们也是我，就是我们谁还没结婚的时候，我们必须有自己的要求，必须有自己的规则，对自己说我不可以跳过这个规则。这是啥意思？ What do I mean by that? For example, if you have not yet married, 如果你还没结婚的话 you need to have rules for yourself. 你必须有这样的规则。For example, I am not going to say, let's say you just found a boyfriend or you just found a girlfriend. 就比如你刚才找到男女朋友 and this is a Christian, 然后他也是基督徒 and let's go even a step further and say someone in your church brought you two together. Say, hey, I know this Christian brother, I know this Christian sister, I want to introduce you and you guys hit it off and it seems like it's going perfect. 然后呢，在你的教会里面有一个弟兄或者姊妹说，嘿，我要接受一个姊妹或者弟兄要给你介绍一下，给你认识一下。然后你们认识的时候非常觉得适合。And so you start to form a relationship. 所以你的关系刚才开始。And let's say your desire is, okay, if everything goes well for a while, then let's talk about marriage. 然后你们都的想法一样的，你觉得 OK， 如果我们过去的段时间我们都觉得是非常好的，就是6个月大概，你们都要自己选择是什么时候。但是6个月后，你们可以开始来讨论结婚的事。Let's put that aside. 我们把这个问题放在右边。 You have to have rules for yourself. You have to have rules in your relationship. 你必须对自己有规则，你的关系必须有规则。For example, 就比如 that us two are never going to be alone in a house by ourselves. There has to always be other people around us. 就比如我和他不可以在一个房间住，或者不可以在一个房间没有别人在这个房间。We are not allowed to be out alone, let's say like in a park when it's nighttime, when no one else is around. We have to have limits. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to put up restrictions and rules for yourself that you will not cross over. 就比如你也不能你也不可 OK， 你可以作为一个规则说了 OK， 我们每天晚上如果是外面是12点后，我们不可以在花园里在一起。Why do we want to have rules like this? 那为什么我们要对自己有这样的规则 ？So you don't fall into sin, you or him. 所以 or her. 所以你和他不可以犯罪。And you have to have these type of restrictions. 你必须有这样的规则。That means that there is only so much that you give to him or her before marriage. 就是说，你还没结婚的时候，不可以全部给他你自己，他也不可以全部给他自己。Ruth 4:13， 路得记第4章13节。So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her. And the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. 有时波阿斯娶了路得为妻，与他同房，耶和华使她怀孕，生了一个儿子。So, if you know the story about Ruth, what happens? 如果你知道这个故事，路得这里是什么事 ？Well, the chapter before that 就是全面的。而上面的章 she actually slept one night at the foot of Boaz's feet. 她有一天晚上在波阿斯的脚睡觉。And when Boaz wakes up, he's very impressed. 然后呢，波阿斯他醒了的时候，他非常感动。But it wasn't for he was really moved, but not by what you probably would think. He was moved because this woman showed and displayed integrity. She showed and displayed that she was a very godly woman. 她为什么她非常感动？因为她发现了这个姊妹，她非常非常圣洁的，她没有什么罪。And Boaz actually goes on to praise and says, you could have gone, you don't care if it's an old person or a young person, if they're rich or they're poor. That's not what's on your concern. 然后他以后波阿斯就对路得说了，我要给你赞，因为你现在的要求不是年龄是多大，而且不是有钱或者没有钱。所以他说我要给你赞。And Ruth, the next day, she's instructed by one of her older sisters and says, you know what? You're to do this and you're not to do that. She gives specific instructions on what to do. And she tells Ruth that I'm going to tell you what's going to happen and don't run. Don't get ahead of yourself. I know you want this, but do as I say. And she does. And it ends up leading to their marriage. 然后呢，第二天路得有一个姐妹对他说了，你明天不可以做1、2、3，他给他几个不可以做的。然后他对他说了，你要等候。我告诉你，如果你等候的话，以后他可能问你要不要结婚。And she had opportunity. She could have chased after other men. But she decided to wait. 她有很多机会，她也可以追求别的男人。 但是他选择等候。And as a matter of fact, she started to get a really good reputation during that time. 而且那时候她有非常好的reputation， 就在别人的眼睛中，她是非常宝贵的。所以很多男生那时候开始喜欢她，但是她还选择等候。And so, number 2, maintain a balanced approach to giving. 第二个，在给予方面保持平衡。Like Ruth, she knew what she had to do. She could have ran off with the other younger guys. She could have chased after someone with a lot of wealth. But she refrained because she knew what was right, what God would have wanted. 而那女的，她可以选择追求非常年轻的或者比较老的，但是有钱的男人。但是她选择等候耶和华，她选择等候波阿斯的回复。And so us as Christians, when we are looking at finding a boyfriend or girlfriend, or we want to get married, we have to also restrain ourselves. We have to put restrictions upon ourselves, rules upon ourselves, that we are not going to cross this line. I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to do that. 然后我们特别是还没结婚的弟兄姊妹们，或者你也可能准备结婚，我们必须对自己有规则，说 OK， 我可以走这样的，但是我那样的不可以走。And one of the things that is really messed up in our culture right now, 然后我们现在的社会很大的问题是什么 is that many boyfriend and girlfriends treat their boyfriend or girlfriend just like they're married. 很多男的女朋友对他们的爱人，就是他们的男女朋友，他们的配偶，对他们跟他们已经结婚的一样的做法。They live together, they sleep together, they buy gifts, they spend money, all on the same level as someone that's already married. 他们开始聚在一起，一起上床，一起花钱，跟他们已经结婚的一样的做法。There is no restrictions. 没有规则 no rules. And so, what happens when the relationship goes sour? Not 1 year later. 那1年后，他们的关系破坏得很厉害。那有什么结果？分手，他们分手。And so what happens a year later when their relationship goes bad? They break up. And when this happens over and over and over, by the time you go to marriage, you've already built in all these bad habits because you had no restrictions before. You had no rules. Well, we already were living together. We already sleeping together. And I bought her this and I bought her that. And then now we broke up. And then when you get into marriage, you're treating your wife or your husband the same way you treat all your other boyfriend and girlfriends because there was no restrictions earlier. And so now you're thinking, well, divorce seems like the only option because I broke up with him, and now I should just divorce him because there's no difference. Does that make sense? 所以我们现在很多人也有这样的基督徒，因为他们之前没有对自己有规则，没有控制自己，他们跟他上床，花了很多钱。那他们结婚的时候，他们的对老婆对老公一样的，跟他们的之前的男女朋友没有什么特别，没有什么区别。然后呢，婚礼遇到问题的时候，他们觉得，我之前有10个、6个、8个男朋友，我跟他们分手，但是也跟他们上床，也跟他们花很多时间，花很多钱。那你的结婚遇到问题的时候，你已经习惯了什么？我老公就是一个字，老公，但是你对他的做法跟你的之前的男女朋友一样的，明白吗？所以你就是为什么我们现在发现了我们的时代有这么多的离婚的弟兄姊妹们，因为没有什么区别，跟他们之前的关系没有什么区别，因为之前他们也没有什么对自己有关系，而对自己有要求或者规则。 所以他们的结婚的生活跟他们之前的男女朋友的生活差不多一样的，这是很大的问题。And so this is one of the reasons why there is such a high divorce rate among Christians, especially those that are younger. Why? Because they're in their minds, they don't say this, but in their minds, their husband and wife, it's no different than their prior boyfriends or girlfriends. Because when they were dating, they didn't have any restrictions for themselves. Now all it is just a name, a title, or a piece of paper. Yeah, and they had a wedding, that's it. Other than that, there's no difference. 所以他们，特别是 like 现在很多弟兄姊妹们可能结婚比较短的时间，然后就是已经开始思考离婚，因为他们现在的对老公老婆跟他们对之前的男女朋友一样的，没有什么区别，除了一个执照，结婚的执照，结婚证，没有什么别的区别。And so, us as Christians, when you find another guy that you might want to pursue marriage, or you find another girl you might want to pursue marriage, you have to put restrictions on that relationship. 所以我们基督徒，如果你交到了一个弟兄，你开始跟他在一起，以后可能结婚了，你必须对自己，对你和他有关系的规则，必须。That means, and I would say there's two major rules that you need to have. Well, three, I guess. 有三个很大的规则，我就是我自己建议你们应该有。Number one, you should have a rule to never be alone together, just two people, especially if it's at nighttime. 你们俩不可以在一起，在你的周围没有别人，特别是在晚上。Number two, 第二个 don't spend an insane amount of money on him or her until you propose. 而且不要花很多钱为了他，如果你们还没订婚的话。And I think this is just us as, and now especially for us guys, this is us guys, we have a soft spot, you could say, that when we find someone we really like, it's very easy for us to spend a lot of money on them. And I would say us as Christians, and this is advice to myself as well, that we need to control that until we are actually moving towards getting married. 然后我们，特别是我们的弟兄，如果我们找到女朋友或者爱人，非常非常喜欢他们，我们的习惯是什么？就是把很多钱花给他，买他这个，买他那个。我也有这个问题，所以我们必须控制，因为他还不是你的老婆，还不是你的老公。如果你们订婚以后可以开始考虑。But I would say, for instance, like if you're going to buy any type of jewelry and give it to her, or you're going to buy any type of jewelry and give it to him, I would say the first piece of jewelry for us guys that are going to buy another Christian girl is the ring for when you're going to propose. And you shouldn't buy anything else before that. 然后呢，就是特别是我现在对弟兄们说，如果你要买比较贵的东西给他，我真的建议你第一个很贵的东西要给他是一个戒指，就是你准备订婚的时候。但是如果你还不考虑订婚，那不要花很多钱，因为你不知道他以后是你的老婆，或者姊妹们一样的，你还不知道他是你的老公，所以不要花很多钱给他。Because you need to build in these habits. We need to build in these habits of this is how I'm going to treat my husband and wife later on. And I don't want to treat this boyfriend, this girlfriend, especially if you haven't even engaged, the same way that I would potentially treat my husband later on or my wife later on. Because you want to have, when you get into marriage, you want to have it has to be different than when you were dating or courting or whatever beforehand. It has to be different. 所以你还没结婚的时候， 你跟他在一起，必须控制自己，必须对自己有规则。因为你结婚的时候，你可以买很贵的东西送给你老公，送给你老婆，但是如果你在一起的时候，不要这样子。因为你需要知道，特别是在你的脑海里，我未来的老公，我未来的老婆，跟我在一起的时候是不同的。特别是如果你还没订婚的话。And then the last one, 第三个 number 3. This should be a no-brainer that we as Christians do not sleep with our boyfriend or girlfriends or fiancés until we are married. 然后这个应该我们都知道，但是还没结婚的时候，如果他是你的男女朋友或者跟他订婚了，不可以跟他一起上床。And statistics show that those that have premarital sex open up the doors drastically for future divorce. And as Christians, we want to do everything we possibly can to protect our future relationship, our future marriage. 然后呢 statistics 就是告诉我们，他们已经研究了好多这样的人。如果你还没结婚的话，但是已经开始上床，你的离婚的1%成为超级高，你离婚的机会超级高。但是如果你选择我不跟他一起上床，等到我们结婚的时候，那你的离婚的机会非常低。And this isn't just one Christian's thoughts or ideas or my opinion. This is just statistics. 然后这不是我自己的想法，这不是我自己的我想要的。你在网络可以查一下，很多人已经研究这个问题。And we have many years of data that prove that this is true. 然后我们有很多年的就是记录，就告诉我们就是真的。And so we have to do everything in our power to hold off and refrain from having sex before marriage until we're married. 所以我们必须控制自己，控制我们的关系，不要在还没结婚的时候上床。And then when you're married, now let's take this and kind of flip it over. 那你结婚的时候，我们要把这个问题就反过来。When we're married, we should be often, husband and wife should often be sleeping together. 你结婚的时候，老公老婆应该平常一起上床。And as a matter of fact, Paul says that there was in the Corinth church, 就比如在哥林多的教会里面，保罗对那个教会的弟兄姊妹们告诉他们一个问题。And Paul was talking to the Corinth church because there was an issue. And one of the issues that were going on was that, okay, you have to remember that the Corinth church was next to the temple of Diana. 哥林多的教会旁边是 Diana 那个神的殿，是在那个教会的旁边。And that goddess, 然后这个小神 Diana, 我忘记中文怎么说。She had at the temple, there would be many male and female priests. And the priests would teach that if you're going to come into worship, one of the ways you can worship is you can sleep with me, the priest, and this would be a holy ritual that would go up to our God. 然后呢，那个殿有很多男女的祭司。然后呢，有人过来赞美的话，他们平常对他们说了，如果你跟我一起睡觉的话，那就是我们给我们自己的神礼拜。So many people do this. 所以很多人这样做的。And so when the Corinthian church, when the Christians started to flourish in the city, 然后呢，哥林多的教会开始的时候， some Christians saw that their culture is just absorbed. The culture, meaning that the city they lived in, is absorbed in sex. 然后他们发现了很多基督徒，他们就是开始信靠耶稣的时候，发现了他们自己的尝试有这么做爱的习惯的事情。So in the church, those that had been married for a long period of time, they started to do the opposite. They said, we don't want to be a part of the culture. We know we should not be a part of this culture, this city, that what they're doing is wrong, it's sin, and they're right. But then they took it to the opposite direction, to the extreme. 然后他们开始信靠耶稣的时候，就发现，嘿，我们的城市有这么多罪，特别是关于做爱的罪，所以他们发现了，哎，这是非常不好，而且他们说是对了，但是他们把这个问题就超过好的问题 ，and they took this issue and allowed it to surpass what was good, and that's what that was. If they're already married and they decided, you know what, we're married, we don't want to be part like the culture, so we're just not going to have sex anymore. I'm not going to sleep with my husband anymore. I'm not going to sleep with my wife anymore. And in doing so, we'll get more holy. And this is the kind of thing that was going on in the church. 然后他们觉得，哎，我们已经结婚了5年，那我不跟我老公睡觉，我不跟他做爱，或者我老公也不跟他妻子做爱，因为我们已经结婚了，而且我们发现我们城市的做爱的犯罪超级多。所以如果我没有跟我配偶做爱的话，那就是跟神借的。And Paul comes in and says, you know what, guys, this thinking is wrong. 然后保罗他就告诉这个教会，你现在的做法，你现在的生活是完全不对。And he goes, what's going to happen? You guys do this. You think you're being holy, but you're just giving the opportunity for the devil to come in. 然后他说了，你们觉得你们做的是非常对，而且你们觉得你做的是圣洁的，但是我告诉你，你现在给魔鬼机会。And he says, don't refrain from sleeping with your spouse unless it's for a very short time in fasting. He gives the rules. He says, do this. You don't want to abstain from sleeping with your husband and wife, because if you do that, you're going to open up all these opportunities for the devil to come and tempt you. 然后呢，保罗就对这个教会说了，我告诉你们，你们现在做的不对，我告诉你，你应该做什么。如果你短时间，就是你在真实的时候，短时间选择不做爱，那可以的，但是不要那么长，为了免得你给魔鬼机会来攻击你的婚礼，攻击你的结婚的生活。然后就是更糟糕的、更大的问题。And so that's actually one of the reasons why, honestly, this is one of the reasons why people have someone on the side, a side chick, after they've already been married. This is one of the reasons why. 就是你发现了，就是为什么很多，特别是 like 老公可能去找小三，为什么？因为他们在家里好久没有跟他老婆一起做爱，但是如果很长的时间没有做爱的话，你觉得这个想要是做了吗？没有，还存在，所以以后去找小三。And so this is why there are men that especially will find a woman on the side. Because just because if a guy doesn't sleep with his wife for a long period of time, doesn't mean that the desire to have sex goes away. It's still there. So they just find it someplace else. And us as Christians, we are not to do that. 然后我们基督徒不可以这样做的。Because guess what's going to happen? Your desire, you may think that you're being holy or godly, but actually your desire is still there. And sooner or later, Satan's going to come and is going to get in between your marriage and is going to use it to pull either you or him or her away and bring someone else in to fulfill that desire. 然后你这样的想要，这样的生吃还存在。然后如果你很长的时间没有做过的话，那魔鬼会来进入你的结婚的生活。然后如果不是你，那就是他会诱惑他，为了来攻击你的婚姻。So there has to be rules and restrictions on our relationships. Those that are not yet married, we must set rules down until we're married. 然后还没结婚的弟兄姊妹们，我们必须有规则，这3个规则。And those that are married, those that have already been married, what you've started, continue doing. And don't stop having sex saying, well, we've already been married 5 years, we can stop now. Because that's the first step in giving Satan access into your relationship. 然后呢，已经结婚了比较长的时间， 也不能说啊，我们已经结婚了5年，那我们可以现在不常常做爱，因为就是第一步给魔鬼进入你的结婚的生活的机会。Number 3, embrace your authentic self. 第3个，拥抱真实的自我。Psalm 139, 114. 诗篇139章14节。I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. 我有常谢你，因我受造奇妙可畏，你的作为奇妙，这是我深知的。This is telling us right now that God creates every single person differently. 这经文正在告诉我们，上帝创造所有的人都不一样的。That means God has given you things that are special and unique to you and you alone. 这个意思是上帝给你自己跟别人不一样的特点，特别的地方，跟别人不一样的。That means that, for example, that means Brother TF and myself are different. God created us differently. He has special things in him. I have special things in me. 就比如这个意思是上帝创造我还有跟唐飞弟兄不一样的，他有特点我没有，我有特点他没有，因为上帝创造所有的人这样子。And so when you are going into a relationship, 所以你开始有关系的时候 for example, you're saying, okay, you know what, I'm 25 years old, I want to start thinking about marriage. 你对自己说，我现在25岁，我想开始考虑结婚的事。And you find this godly Christian woman, 然后你发现了，你找到一个非常圣洁的姊妹。And you really like her, she really likes you. 然后你非常喜欢她，她非常喜欢你。And you guys decide to start to get together. 然后你们开始在一起。And after a few months, you guys are thinking, maybe one day we'll get married, maybe down the road, one day we'll get married. 然后你们开始几个月后，你们就开始讨论，有可能一天我们结婚。But, 但是 you found that there's something that you don't really like in her, or you found something, or she found something that she doesn't really like in you. 但是你发现了，你找到一个我不太喜欢这小的点，或者她对她的男朋友说，我找到了一个不好的习惯，我不太喜欢他。And then you start thinking, how can I change him? How can I change her? 然后你开始想一想，我怎么改变他？我怎么改变他？ Now, first off, if it's a Christian, let's say it's something that's really bad, and it's bad for like the health, and it's something that a Christian should not be doing, that's one thing. That's not what I'm talking about. 就比如，如果你发现了你的爱人有不好的习惯，对他身体不健康，或是对家庭或者对你们俩不健康，那就或者是真的是犯罪，那就是一件事，这不是我的意思。And if it's sin, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here is that, let's say there's something like, okay, I really don't like her hairstyle. I really don't like his body language when he's talking with people. He's too exuberant. 然后你说了，我不太喜欢我男朋友的头发的方式，或者我不太喜欢我的男朋友他在说话的时候他的表达，我不太喜欢。Or you're thinking like, you know what? I really don't like the way, I don't like some of his hobbies. He should be more, I wish he wouldn't, play so much sports, and I wish he would, spend more time with me and things like that. And you want to change him. 然后你说他玩了太多运动的游戏，我希望他会花更多时间跟我在一起。Or you say, you know what, I really don't like the color pink. I don't want her wearing color pink. 然后你说我不太喜欢粉色，我希望她不会穿粉色的衣服。And so you start to think of ways to change her or him， 然后你开始想想我怎么改变他。Oh, I know, I'll start buying some clothes for her. Nothing pink. Or you know what? Or I'll whenever he wants to go out and play some sports, I'm gonna make him jealous. Or I'm gonna do something that's gonna make him upset so that he won't go. 然后你发现了，他准备出去运动的时候，我不想他出去运动，所以我要发脾气，或者我要让他嫉妒，或者什么什么什么的。And what you're doing is actually you are if it's something that's not bad, what you're doing is that you're trying to change who this person is instead of allowing them to be probably how God has created them to be, allowing that to flourish. You're trying to change what God had created them to be. 然后如果不是不好的 like 习惯或者爱好，那你现在是想改变他们，为了你想要的，为了你在你的脑海里的偶像的想要，因为上帝可能这样的创造他。And so you're thinking, okay, in my mind, I have an image of him or her that I want him or her to be. Or I have an idol of who I want him or her to be. And so you start to do things and change. But that might not be how God created them. None of us are the same. Like, there are guys, like myself, I don't, except for like skateboarding and maybe wrestling and skiing and snowboarding, I don't like normal sports. 就比如我自己，我不太喜欢运动，除了滑板，还有美国的摔跤，还有滑雪。除了这几个，我没有喜欢别的运动。But if I found, like, for example, like if I found a girl who I wanted to marry and she really, really, really likes sports, it would be bad for me to want to change her so that she doesn't do sports anymore. Because that's going to make her miserable. 就比如如果我找到一个爱人，以后我想跟他结婚，但是他非常喜欢运动，超级喜欢运动。如果我想完全改变他，以后他不会运动的话，就是非常不好，因为以后会影响他的态度，会影响他的性格。And if I change her from wanting to do sports, that's going to ultimately impact her attitude and her character. So to maintain a healthy relationship, we want to help to promote, if it's good, to promote who God has created him or her to be. Especially if you're going to get married. Or even in marriage, you want to keep doing this. You don't want to change your husband or your wife to fit something that you want that might not be how God created him or her. Instead, we should try to understand. 所以就比如或者如果你已经结婚的时候，不要改变你的老公或者你的老婆在你的脑海里想要的，而且我们要扶持上帝这样的创造他，因为他跟别人不一样的，他也跟你不一样的。如果扶持是好的，扶持只有好的事情，如果是坏的，那就是另外一个问题，这不是我的意思。So number 3, embrace your authentic self and don't change yourself to meet his or her demands or her needs. Because ultimately that's going to end up hurting you in the long run as well. 而且也不要改变你自己为了他。可能短时间是好的，但是以后肯定不好，会影响你们的关系。因为你是你，他是他。So number 3, embrace your authentic self. 所以第三个 and for him or her. 第三个，拥抱真实的自我，自我我还有自我他。Number 4,第四个 expect and respect pursuit. 期待还有尊重的追求。Proverbs 18:22, 箴言18章22节。He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. 得着仙妻是从耶和华得着恩惠。And a lot of Christian men, especially single Christian men, we know this verse. 很多单身的弟兄们，我们都知道这个经文，当然了。And most men that are Christians, that have been a Christian for a while, they desire to get married. And they know that when they get married, that they receive favor and a blessing from the Lord. 然后很多我们弟兄们，我们都知道，结婚的时候，上帝会给我们特别的恩惠，因为我们现在是新的家庭，新的人。And so men, Christian men, if they show an interest to a girl, will try to pursue her to some extent. 所以我们基督徒，如果一个弟兄真的找到他喜欢的姊妹，他肯定上一上开始追求她。And there's countless examples of this. 有很多这样的例子。For example, 唐飞和 Kumi， 就比如唐飞还有 Kumi。唐飞 moved to Guangzhou, so he could spend more time with Kumi. 唐飞那时候就搬到广州，为了可以跟 Kumi 花更多时间，更多机会见面他。Or look at Boaz and Ruth， 或者你看波阿斯还有勒的。Look at Ruth 3:18， 勒的记3章18节。Then she said, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." Meaning that this older sister is giving Ruth advice saying, wait, he will pursue you. You don't need to pursue him. Because he also wants to get married. 那阿咪说，我女儿呢，你等着。他没有说你现在去，快，因为你要结婚，他也要结婚，不是，他说你等着。看哪人这样完成事情的，因为他进入不办场这事必不熟悉。所以他的建议是什么？路的，你等候他，你不要追求他，让他追求你。And so this sister says to Ruth, what does she say? Naomi says what? She says, wait, my daughter, wait. Don't run after him. I know you want to get married. I know, and he wants to get married. He knows that. He's a Christian too. And he knows that he'll get favor from the Lord. 然后他也是弟兄，他也知道，他也想结婚，他也知道他结婚的时候，上帝会给他恩惠，他都知道。And what did she say? Did she say, go now? She's after him. What are you doing, girl? Get going. Faster. Let's get going. 他这么说，姊妹你干嘛？快点去，快点。他没有这样说，对吧？ She says, wait. And if it's what he wants, he will not rest. He won't rest. He'll come after you. 然后如果他真喜欢你，他不会休息，他会追求你比较厉害。所以你等候，不要着急。So don't get nervous, don't get anxious. Wait. And so this is, I would say, especially for sisters. Yes, is it there's nothing wrong with a sister expressing to a guy that she likes him. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's no reason for her to chase him. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you this, being a guy myself, if a girl chases me, it's automatically, in my mind, it's a huge turnoff. And a lot of guys are this way. A lot of guys. 我告诉你，因为我是男生，我是弟兄。如果我发现了一个姊妹喜欢我，然后她开始追求我，对我自己来说，我真的不喜欢，真的不喜欢。然后这就是在我的脑海里，就是我把门关了，因为我真的感觉这不是一点可爱没有。很多弟兄，很多男生我们是这样子，不是全部的，但是很多是这样子。然后圣经就知道这个问题，所以这里拿阿咪对他说：“你等候，不要追求他。如果他喜欢你，他会过来找你。 And the Bible knows this. And so Naomi says, you know what? Don't chase after him. You chase after him, there's a really good chance he might just run from you. Girl, so stay still. And if he likes you, he'll come. And that's what she does. And in the end, I'm getting married. And later on, guess who's in the genealogy? Jesus. Jesus is in the genealogy. 然后呢，拿米没有说，姊妹你干嘛快点去，就去追求他。他没有这样说，他说等候。他等候以后他们结婚了。你知道谁是在他们的后代吗？耶稣。Number 5, the last one, 最后的5个。Prioritize your relationship with God. 元首考虑与上帝的关系。If a Christian wants to get married, they should only be considering someone that is a Christian. What I'm not saying like a Christian can't bring a non-believer to church. I'm not saying that a Christian can't go out to eat with a non-believer and to see. Actually, I know a lot of pastors, I've heard a lot of pastors' testimonies that they led their wives to the Lord. And the only way that's going to happen is if they're spending time together before they're Christians. That is possible, but for most of the time, it tends to not work out. 所以第5个，优先考虑与上帝的关系。很多我们弟兄姊妹们，我们的想法是 OK， 他是非基督徒，但是我挺喜欢他，我可以带领他成为基督徒。其实这样的想法，我听过很多牧师，他们的现在的老婆之前不是基督徒，然后他们以后就带领他们成为基督徒，以后结婚了。但是平常不是这样子。所以最好的是我们弟兄姊妹们，如果你开始跟非基督徒在一起的话，或者你想跟他们一起吃饭，或者你想带他们去聚会的话，这个没有什么大的问题。但是问题是，如果你想跟他订婚，跟他结婚，那就是非常大的问题。And so I see nothing wrong with a Christian going out with an unbeliever one-on-one to eat. I see nothing wrong with a Christian saying, hey, I want to take this unbeliever to church. You know, I like her or she likes me, etc., etc. Or to want to hang out. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But if an unbeliever and a believer get engaged, that's going to lead to marriage. That's where the issues start. Because the idea is, well, maybe after we're married, he'll get married or he'll become a Christian. Or maybe after we get married, she'll become a Christian. 因为很多弟兄姊妹们跟非基督徒订婚的时候，他们想法是我们结婚之后他会成为基督徒。超级多人有这样的想法。But you know what? Most don't ever become Christians. 但是我告诉你，% 多少大概都不成为基督徒。As a matter of fact, when I was preparing this section, specifically this section, today, a sister in our church, she said I can share this, messaged me and she says she's been married for 20 years and her husband wants a divorce. He's not a Christian. 今天我准备第5天的时候，我不是开玩笑，有一个姊妹在我们的教会里面，她就告诉我，他们已经结婚了20年，她的老公要跟她离婚，她说我可以分享这个故事，我已经问了她，她说可以。然后她是基督徒，她老公不是。And she says she's prayed for him for many, many years and tried to take him to church and everything like that. And 20 years later, he's still not Christian. 然后她说她这么多年为他祷告，结婚了20年，她现在很炸场想跟他离婚，她完全不想继续跟他在一起。And right now, this husband wants nothing more than to get divorce her. And not only that, but he's taking her to the court. He's trying to sue her. He's trying to get the house. He's trying to get a ton of money, and he's trying to get the daughter. So he's trying to take everything from her. Everything from her. And at one point, they loved each other. At one point, she was thinking, I'm a Christian. Well, he'll become a Christian one day because I am. But that day never came. 20 years later, the dude wants a divorce. He wants the house. He wants a ton of money, and he wants a daughter. And he wants the wife to have nothing. And so right now they're fighting in court, and she says, please, please pray for me. 然后他今天跟我说，我求你牧师，我求你为我祷告，因为我和我老公之前我们当然互相彼此爱，我爱他，他超级爱我。然后我觉得我们结婚的时候，我可以带领他成为基督徒，但是那天从来没有出来的。20年后，他还是非基督徒。然后他现在去发光，说了房子是我的，全部钱是我的，孩子是我的，而且以后我不生我老婆再见面我孩子。所以他现在那个姊妹非常非常非常担心，很着急。她说她哭了好多，祷告了好多，但是她的老公还没信耶稣。而且有另外一个问题，但是我现在不说。And there's another issue, but I'm not going to say it. But the point is that there are a lot of people, a lot of Christians that marry because they think that, well, he or she's not a Christian now, but when we're married, I can change them. Or I can take them to church. Or I'll just pray, or I'll fast, or whatever, they'll become a Christian. But you don't know that. You don't know. I don't know. None of us know. 然后很多弟兄姊妹们，我们的想法是，我超级喜欢他。我知道他现在不行，但是我们结婚后，我可以认真为他祷告，可以认真进食祷告，也可以带他去聚会，以后肯定成为基督徒。慢慢来，慢慢来。但是没有人知道未来的事，除了上帝，没有人知道。而且平常如果你想改变他，或者他想改变你，只让他的心比你更硬。And often what happens is when we try to change, what happens is we try to change him or her. Their heart just becomes more hard. And what the sister is going through is truly, truly sad. 然后这个姊妹她现在的问题非常非常超级可怜，超级可怜。As a matter of fact, she told me today that when she was at the court, she got angry at the judge and they threatened to throw her in jail. 然后她今天也跟我说了，她在法官里的时候，她对那个 judge 非常生气，说了很多。然后那个 judge 对她说了，你要不要我带你去监狱里？你可以留在哪里5年。So pray for her. And her name is well, she doesn't have an English name, but her English name, she said, is called Yubin. Her Chinese name is Liu Yubin. 然后这个姊妹你可以为她祷告，她没有英文的名字，但是她的中文名字是柳玉斌。And I asked her, I said, what advice would you give to single people in our church? Because our church has a lot of single people. I said, what advice would you give? And she gave me a quote, and it's on the PPT. 然后我问她，你有什么建议给我们的教会的单身的弟兄姊妹们有什么建议？ And this is what she said. 然后她说这样子，AG, it's on the slide if you can find it. AG 在那个 PPT 上可以找到它。It says, young people are she says, young people, be very, very aware who you fall in love with. Make sure you fall in love, not lust. That is really good. Make sure your heart is pure. Find a Christian spouse. God is love. Turn to God. And do not lean on your own understandings. That's what she said. 就是她说了，不是我说了。她说，年轻人要非常非常小心选择恋爱的对象， 确保你是出于爱而不是欲望，确保你的心是纯洁的，寻找一个基督徒的配偶，因为上帝就是爱，关上上帝，不要依靠的理解。And that is excellent, excellent advice. 他的建议是非常非常好。Especially when she says, make sure that you fall in love, not in lust. 然后他特别是他说了，确保是出于爱而不是欲望。这个真说的真不错。All right, so one other thing I want to share just real quick and then we'll finish. 还有一件事，然后可以快结束。So there's this understanding that Christians are. As a matter of fact, let's stop here. We can do this a different day because there's still some more. 我们现在可以这里停止，因为还有很多内容。But the last thing, go to the very last slide. Look at the prayer request. 我们去那个最后的 PPT 的页，就是祷告的请求。So right now, I want us to pray for the 6 newly married couples that have been married in the past year. 我们为这6个刚才这一年过刚才结婚的6个弟兄姊妹们。Number 1 is Annie and Luke. Number 2 is Kumi and Tengfei. 第一个是 Annie Luke， 第二个是 Tengfei Kumi. Number 3， 第三个Shelly and her husband Chen Guola. Number 4, and everyone is in our church group, and if you don't know who they are, just let me know. 然后他们都在我们的教会里，如果你不认识他的话，就告诉我，我告诉你。Number 3 is Abby Grace and her husband. By the way, Shelly and her husband are not Christian. 就比如 Shelly 还有她的老公不是基督徒 ，but she told me last week that once I come back, she's gonna bring her child. She just had a child, very very small. She wants to bring her child to our church, and she's gonna come to our church, and hopefully we can get her husband to come too. 然后她上周跟我说了，她刚才生了宝宝，她说带她还有她的宝宝每周去参加我们的聚会，所以我们要为他们祷告。Number 3 is Abigail. She's about to have a child, her first child, and her husband, who I believe is not a Christian. 第4个是 Abigail 还有她的老公，而且好像她的老公不是基督徒，她准备生孩子。Number 3 is Mitch and Sandra. They got married right before the summer. 第5个是 Mitch 还有Sandra， 他们好像5月结婚了。And then MJ and Timothy got married 2 weeks ago. 还有 MJ Timothy 他们2周前结婚了。So please pray for these. Please pray for everyone that's that wants to get married, because our church has a lot. Like you go through the list, there's probably 40% are singles, maybe 50%. And then also please pray for these 3 marriages. Pray for Brother Kent and his marriage. 然后你看到我们教会的名单，可能50%是单身的，所以我们要为未来结婚的弟兄姊妹们祷告。然后最后的 please pray for these 3 marriages, because right now they're having lots of issues. 然后我们要为这3个弟兄姊妹们的结婚的祷告，因为有很大的问题。Number 1 is Liu Yubin, who I just shared. 第一个是Liu Yubin. Number 2 is Dong Zimei Tao Dishong. You guys know, everyone knows about that. And number 3 is Kent and his wife. 第3个是 Kent Dishong 还有他的妻子。We want to pray for them, that God would be merciful and help with healing them. We want to pray for our future marriages, and also we want to pray for these 6 that have just recently gotten married in the past year. And then let's pray, and we'll transition to our prayer time. 天父爸父，感谢你，我们现在为我们的教会，特别是还没结婚的弟兄姊妹们祷告，请你预备我们未来的配偶，希望弟兄姊妹们不会那么着急，会追求你，而且不会改变自己为了他，但是我们还选择跟着你。主啊，我也为李玉斌还有她的老公祷告，她的老公不认识你，我们为他的得救祷告，还有他们的婚礼祷告，而且我们要为董姊妹曹弟兄祷告，请你完全改变他们，让特别是曹弟兄悔改变。然后最后，主啊，我们为这6个刚才结婚的Annie, Luke, Kumi, Tengfei, Shelly, Chen Guola, Abigail, 阿包 Mitch、Sandra、MJ and Timothy 祷告，主啊，祝福他们，因为他们都是还没有那么长的时间结婚，所以赐给他们你的恩惠，还有你的恩典，然后祝福我们的教会，帮我们教会找到最适合的新的场地。我奉你耶稣基督的名求，阿们。